Madam Speaker, we've spent the best part of this evening wasting Parliament's time on a divisive fear-mongering bill which was designed to waste our time.
Oh, sorry, you're not allowed to reflect on the bill.
I'm reflecting on the time that we've been spending. I won't reflect on the detail of the bill. And I think what it shows to me this week in Parliament with the Liberals is where the priorities really are. And we have spent days and days of debating bills which have been presented not once, not twice, but 3 times to this place, Madam Speaker. 3 times to this place when it is clear that not only reintroducing them again will not pass this place, but it will not pass the other place as well. Here we are with the government making decisions which demonstrate where the priorities are, and the priorities are not with the needs of Tasmanians. They are with the needs of the Liberal Party to deflect from their gross failures of government in 5.5 years. The disastrous state of the health system, that Minister Ferguson has now removed himself from that stench, passed the buck on to somebody else, but the problems remain. They might change the ministers, but their method of approach to gouging money out of the public health system and diverting resources from the state to the private sector is tried and tested, and we can see where it's heading us in Tasmania. It's heading us into dark and dangerous waters. So it is not surprising that here we are debating one of the most vindictive and the grossest attacks on human rights and our right to freedom of assembly, freedom of communication and freedom of protest. Instead, what should the government be doing? They should be doing at least, Madam Speaker, what they have got in their own agenda for this year. Building your future, according to the Liberals, had a number of things which they were absolutely going to do, come hell or high water. The one I want to talk about, the most important one, the only one that should be the first priority for this government, is taking action on climate change. Where is the State Climate Act, Madam Speaker? The Climate Change State Action Act 2008 was due to come back here at the latest by September. Now, I asked the Minister about this in budget estimates. She promised it would be here in the spring session of Parliament. It wasn't. It's not here today, Madam Speaker. There's one more chance for the Liberals to table the State Action on Climate Change Act tomorrow, but that leaves no time for us to debate it. It means there will be no action on the already pathetically weak stance that this government takes on action on reducing emissions and preparing us to adapt for the realities of the climate heating that's occurring. No time, because it's not the priority of this government. They would rather spend our time in here talking about pointless bills that are designed to whip up fear and peddle false truths that mandatory minimum sentences, for example, will have any effect on the impact of assaults on frontline workers, or will have any effect on the reality of abuse of children by pedophiles. Neither of those things will have that effect. But we have wasted time in here when what we should have been doing is looking at the amendments that must be made to the Climate Change State Action Act. Not only is this an abrogation of their responsibilities to the young people who are looking for leadership and guidance, it's also just really incredibly crap form of governance. Excuse my words, it's late. It's an appallingly bad form of governance. It is really scary when this Liberal government just so consciously refuses to talk about the things that people most want to have action on. Along with the failure to deliver on their promise of the State Climate Change Act, they have also failed to provide any legislation on major projects, Madam Speaker. And this is a funny football that the Liberals have been kicking around since 2014. They went to the 2014 election with a promise to introduce major projects legislation. They introduced a draft bill in October 2017. The community went ballistic. It was a disaster, a total attack on community right to have a say, a total removal of powers of investigation and assessment from the appropriate authorities, and handing all of those powers to the minister. Well, in response to the outrage before the state election last year, the minister released a second version of that in January, which was somewhat improved, and a promise, Madam Speaker. The Minister, Peter Gutman, promised that the bill would be redrafted to rule out very high buildings being able to be declared major projects. Well, you know what happens with the promises of Peter Gutman, Madam Speaker. They're not worth the paper they're written on. In this case, it may not even have been written on paper. So we still have the axe hanging over the head of residents who are seriously concerned about the super high fragrance group skyscrapers, buildings that are proposed for Hobart and Launceston, and the fast-tracking potential of major projects legislation. Well, Minister Gutman promised that building heights wouldn't exceed what planning schemes currently have in them, and that they could not be called in as major projects. We want to know, we want to see that legislation, and it's another thing that hasn't been done.